If the money leaving your pocket for feed is bigger than the money coming back from eggs, then stay with me, because the next several minutes might change how your whole operation runs. Feed has roughly tripled in price since 2020. For the average backyard keeper, somewhere around 70% of everything spent on the flock disappears into that sack. And somewhere in the gap between your bank account and your hen's beaks, somebody is doing extremely well for themselves. But there is a plant. One plant. It doubles its own mass every 72 hours. It carries more protein per square meter than soybeans do, and it costs you nothing to grow once you have it. Agricultural researchers in India, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines have been studying it for more than 40 years. Peer-reviewed, published, proven in the field. So why has the man at your feed store never said a word about it? There are two reasons, and I'm going to walk you through both of them. By the time this video ends, you will know what the plant is, how to set it up, how to harvest it, and how to get it into your birds without buying another bag. Let us begin with what that money is actually buying. Look at a $40 sack of layer feed. You are not paying for corn and soy. You are paying for ocean freight and truck diesel, for the margin of every hand it passed through, for the printed bag, for the marketing budget that put a smiling farm on the front of it. Every time fuel climbs, every time wheat futures jump, every time drought hits a growing region, that number on the tag goes up again. Back in 2019, a 50-pound sack of decent layer ration ran somewhere between $15 and $18. Today, the identical sack will take $35 to $50 out of your wallet, depending on where you live. That is not ordinary inflation. That is extraction. And for a small operation, a homestead, or anyone simply trying to put their own food on the table, it has stopped adding up. Run the numbers with 20 birds. You will burn through roughly 100 pounds a month. At current prices, that is $70 to $100 every month, without fail. Stretch it across a year and you are staring at $840 to $1,200 just to keep them fed. And if you sell eggs at $6 a dozen, you have to move somewhere between 140 and 200 dozen before you have even broken even on feed alone. Never mind bedding, never mind fencing, never mind your own hours. The arithmetic simply does not work anymore. So the question shifts. What if you grew the feed instead of buying it? Not a little side supplement, but a genuine replacement. What if you could do it in an area smaller than a child's paddling pool, with no soil at all, no fertilizer, no sprays, and end up with more protein per harvest than anything on that store shelf? That plant is real. It is called azolla, and if the name means nothing to you, you are in the majority. Azolla is a small floating water fern. Under decent conditions, it can double its own biomass in 2 to 3 days. Across Asia, it has served as livestock feed and green manure for well over 1,000 years. In the West, it barely registers. Here is why it deserves your attention. On a dry weight basis, azolla runs somewhere between 25 and 35% crude protein. Commercial layer ration typically sits considerably lower than that. Soybean meal, the benchmark everybody points to for plant protein, comes in around 44%, but getting there demands industrial monoculture, synthetic nitrogen, and enormous acreage. Azolla asks for none of it. It floats on still or gently moving fresh water. It has no use for soil, and it pulls nitrogen straight out of the air through a partnership with a cyanobacterium living inside its own leaves. In plain language, the plant fertilizes itself. It doubles in 3 to 5 days depending on warmth and light. A single square meter of water surface can hand you 10 to 15 kilos of fresh azolla in a month. That is 22 to 33 pounds off 1 square meter of water, and protein is only part of it. Azolla carries essential amino acids, beta-carotene, calcium, phosphorus, iron, and vitamins including B12 and K. Birds eating fresh azolla show better laying rates, deeper yolk color, stronger immune response, and healthier feathering. None of this is theory. It sits in the literature. Let me give you that literature. In 1987, Researchers at Tamil Nadu Agricultural University in India ran feeding trials on broilers, replacing as much as a quarter of the conventional ration with fresh azolla. Growth rates held steady. Feed costs dropped sharply. The work appeared in the Indian Journal of Poultry Science. In Vietnam, azolla has been a primary feed for ducks and pigs for decades, especially through the Mekong Delta. The government there actively promoted azolla cultivation during the 1990s as part of rural development work. Farmers grow it in small ponds beside the rice paddies and skim it daily for their animals. A 2009 study out of the University of the Philippines Los Baños tested azolla as a partial replacement for laying hens. Birds on rations containing 10 to 15% azolla lay just as well as the control group, and their yolks came out noticeably darker and richer thanks to the carotenoids. The researchers concluded azolla could take over as much as 20% of commercial feed without any drop in performance. In China, cultivation stretches back more than 1,000 years, mostly as green manure for rice, but also as supplementary feed for animals. The Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences put out multiple papers through the 80s and 90s documenting its nutritional makeup and its practical viability in feeding programs. None of this is experimental. This is old, settled knowledge that the modern feed industry had every incentive to leave alone. Because the moment you truly grasp what a plant like this does, the business model built around you starts showing cracks. And that leads straight to the obvious question. If azolla is cheap, fast, documented, and simple enough for a beginner, why is it still treated as a curiosity rather than standard equipment for every small flock? The first reason becomes clear the moment you follow the money. Azolla needs no factory, no silo, no brand, no distribution fleet, no glossy printed bag. It multiplies in water under sunlight with essentially no infrastructure. That makes it enormously useful to you and enormously inconvenient to an industry whose entire structure rests on you coming back next month. Commercial feed performs best when you remain dependent. Your hens eat from a bag, so you need the next bag, and the one after that, forever. A crop that copies itself does not fit that shape. You acquire it once, or a neighbor hands you a scoop of starter, and from then on, it largely runs itself. That is not a product. That is a way out. The second reason lives in your head rather than your wallet. Most of us were raised to think of animal feed as something manufactured elsewhere, by specialists, in facilities we will never see. We have absorbed the idea that nutrition only becomes legitimate once it has been pelletized, branded, and stacked on a pallet. So when a tiny floating fern offers an answer, the mind rejects it as too easy. But easy is not the same as flimsy. Very often, simplicity is precisely the reason something has survived for centuries. Farmers kept using azolla because it worked, long before there were marketing departments, long before input dependency existed, long before backyard keepers forgot they were capable of producing anything besides eggs. They kept using it because it handed them leverage. Now let me show you what it looks like on the ground, because this is where people brace for complexity, and there really is not any. To grow azolla, you need no greenhouse, no pumps, no expensive pond liner, no hydroponic tower, no equipment of any kind. You need shallow water, a starter culture, some light, and a bit of attention. That is the entire list. The simplest setup is a shallow container sitting where it catches morning sun and some shade through the afternoon. A plastic kiddie pool does the job. A concrete trough does the job. A barrel cut lengthwise does the job. An old bathtub works beautifully. Even a heavy tarp stretched inside a timber frame will do it if it holds water safely. Surface area matters far more than depth. Azolla spreads across the top, so wide and shallow beats deep and narrow every time. 4 to 8 inches of water is plenty. Going deeper gains you nothing. If your container bakes in full sun all day in a hot climate, a little afternoon shade keeps the culture from stressing out. If you are somewhere cooler, more direct light will push growth along. Azolla wants balance. Too much heat turns it reddish and slows it down. Too little light thins the mat out. Fill the container with fresh water that is not heavily chlorinated if you can manage it. Rainwater is ideal. Pond water works well. Tap water is usually fine if you let it stand and off-gas first. The calmer and cleaner the water, the faster the culture takes hold. You do not want current. Azolla has no tolerance for turbulence. It wants to sit, spread, and quietly multiply. Once your starter goes in, fight the urge to manage it. This is where beginners stumble most often. They handle azolla like a delicate laboratory organism when in truth it is a rugged, willing farm ally. What it wants above all is steady conditions. Give it time to close over the surface. Once it forms a thick mat, everything gets easier, maintenance and harvest alike. Now let us talk nutrients, because this is the piece people gloss over. Yes, azolla fixes its own nitrogen, and that is remarkable. But it still needs access to other minerals, phosphorus in particular. If growth stalls, if color goes pale, if the mat starts thinning out, the problem is almost never that azolla is hard to grow. Almost always, the water has simply run out of minerals. A modest splash of compost tea helps. A little diluted manure tea helps. Some growers wrap a pinch of mineral-rich soil in a scrap of cloth and dip it into the water, enough to release trace elements slowly without clouding the whole thing. Others swap out a portion of the water weekly and add a small amount of organic input. You do not need much at all. You are feeding a floating mat, not a field of corn. Healthy azolla looks bright green, sometimes with red tinting along the edges depending on stress, sun, and temperature. If it browns uniformly, collapses into mush, or starts to smell sour, something has gone wrong. The usual suspects are overheating, overcrowding, contaminated water, mineral imbalance, or plain neglect. The good news is that once you recognize the pattern, fixing it is generally straightforward. Harvesting is the satisfying part. You skim it off the top with your hands, a colander, a mesh strainer, or a fine net. Be gentle about it, and do not take everything. Leave a base layer so the mat rebounds quickly. Think of it as mowing a pasture rather than clearing a forest. Leave enough behind and the regrowth will surprise you. Then comes the feeding, and this is where realism matters. Azolla is powerful, but how you introduce it decides whether it works. For most flocks, go gradually. Mix a small handful into whatever they are already eating. Let the birds investigate on their own terms. Chickens are curious creatures, but habit runs deep in them. Once they register it as food, most will start going after it with real enthusiasm, especially when it is fresh and clean. Fresh azolla is bulky because it holds so much water. In hot weather, that is an advantage, since birds benefit from moist green feed when temperatures climb. But if you want to store it or measure portions consistently, drying is the alternative. Spread it thin across a screen or tray somewhere with good airflow. Dried, it becomes far lighter, far more concentrated, and much easier to blend into other feed. Some keepers ferment it lightly alongside other ingredients. Some serve it raw in a separate pan. Some combine it with kitchen scraps, black soldier fly larvae, garden greens, and grain. The precise method matters less than consistency and observation. Watch the birds, watch the laying, watch shell strength, feather quality, and appetite. Let the results tell you what ratio to settle on. And this is where the economics get genuinely interesting. Nobody needs to replace 100% of their commercial feed overnight for azolla to be worth doing. Partial replacement already changes the arithmetic. Cutting 10% matters. Cutting 20% matters more. Cutting 30% reshapes your whole year. Once you stop thinking in absolutes and start thinking in margins, the value becomes impossible to miss. Picture your flock working through sack after sack with no relief in sight. Now picture one corner of your property quietly producing a daily green protein supplement. Not once, not only in season, continuously. After the initial setup, The cost of that supplement is essentially nothing next to a purchased ration. The savings compound over time. The birds keep eating. The bills stop climbing at the same rate. And the whole system gets harder to disrupt. But the larger shift is not financial. The larger shift happens in your thinking the moment you realize feed does not have to arrive from beyond your fence line. Because once you produce one input yourself, you begin questioning all the others. Weeds start looking like forage. Kitchen scraps start looking like nutrition. Insects start looking like protein. A water surface starts looking like productive ground. Dependency stops feeling like necessity and starts looking like a design choice somebody else made for you. That is why people get genuinely excited the first time an azolla pond takes off. Not because a floating fern is impressive to look at. It is not. It looks plain, almost forgettable. But underneath that small green mat sits an entirely different logic of farming. One where biology does more of the labor than industry does. One where sunlight contributes more than your bank balance. One where you stop being a customer and start being a cultivator. And yes, there are limits, and I would rather be honest with you about them. Cold weather slows it down or stops it outright. Some climates need seasonal protection. Some setups fail on the first try because the water overheated, the minerals ran dry, or the starter culture was weak to begin with. Some keepers find their birds need a slower introduction than they expected. None of that changes the central fact that this system is accessible, fixable, and worth learning. Because weigh those problems against the alternative. The alternative is permanent exposure to rising feed prices, global commodity swings, transport disruption, corporate pricing decisions, and ingredient quality you have no say over whatsoever. With azolla, at least part of the solution sits back in your own hands. You can expand it, split it, share it, restart it, improve on it. That counts for more than perfection ever will. There are already smallholders doing exactly this, growing it in tubs behind the coop, in lined trenches, alongside the vegetable beds, in farm ponds, near the duck run, in containers that cost less than a single month of purchased feed. They are not waiting for someone at the feed counter to give them permission. They are running the trial themselves and finding out that old methods still function perfectly well when the modern ones start to strain. And once that happens, the conversation changes shape entirely. It stops being, can this little plant really do anything? It becomes, how much of my system am I willing to redesign now that I know this exists? The answer will be different for every flock, every climate, every keeper. But I have yet to meet anyone who regretted producing more of their own inputs. So if you are standing there looking at your birds, wondering how much longer the numbers hold together, start here. Start small. Build one shallow pond. Track down a starter culture. Learn its rhythm. Watch what happens over 2 weeks, then 4, then 8. Measure what you harvest. Measure what you stop buying. Let evidence rather than habit decide what stays in your routine. Because this is how genuine independence usually begins. Not with some dramatic break from the system. With one practical arrangement that works. One repeatable process. One forgotten piece of knowledge brought back into daily use. From there, momentum does the rest. The truth is that nobody is coming to lower your feed bill on your behalf. No company is going to hand you a method that thins out its own margins. No retailer is going to promote the thing that reduces how often you walk through the door. If you want a different outcome, you have to build a different loop. Azolla is one of those loops. Small, quiet, and far more powerful than it looks. And once you see it for what it actually is, a renewable feed crop sitting in plain sight, you cannot unsee it. A free plant, explosive growth, real nutrition, centuries of evidence behind it. The only thing more surprising than how well it works is how seldom anyone bothers to mention it. So grow some, test it honestly, see what your flock does with it, see what your budget does, see what changes when a feed source starts doubling itself instead of draining your account. Because the knowledge that puts leverage in ordinary hands is rarely the knowledge being advertised to you. It still works, though, and now you know exactly where to start. If this is the kind of forgotten practical knowledge you want more of, subscribe to the channel and I will see you in the next one.